The apartment went dark at 9:17 p.m. Not dim, not flickering. Dark. Savannah Brooks stood frozen in the middle of her tiny Queens kitchen, her 4-month-old son crying in the next room as the hum of the refrigerator died into silence. For a second, she thought it was just another blown fuse. But deep down, she knew. She hadn't paid the electric bill. Again. "Please, not tonight," she whispered, fumbling for her iPhone with shaking hands. The screen lit up her face in the darkness. $12.43. That was all she had left in her checking account. Behind her, baby Noah's cry sharpened. Not fussy. Hungry. She opened the nearly empty can of hypoallergenic formula on the counter and tapped it upside down. Powder dusted out like sand from an hourglass. Empty, and Savannah pressed her lips together to stop them from trembling. She had already asked her manager at CVS for an advance. Already sold the last piece of jewelry her mother gave her. Already ignored 3 hospital billing notices stacked on the table beside a cold cup of coffee. There was no one left to ask, except one number. She opened her messages and typed fast before pride could stop her. "Hey, I'm so sorry to ask. Can I borrow $50 for baby formula? I'll pay you back Friday." She hit send. Only then did she notice the contact name. Not her cousin, not her friend. Just a number she must have saved wrong months ago. Her stomach dropped. 3 dots appeared on the screen. Then a reply. "Who is this?" Savannah stared at the message as Noah's cries filled the dark apartment. She swallowed hard and typed the truth. It's on a mother who made a mistake. 5 minutes passed, then another message. "Send me your address." Outside, somewhere in the distance, an engine roared to life, and Savannah had no idea that by midnight, everything in her life was about to change. Savannah stared at the message for a full 10 seconds before her fingers moved. "Send me your address." Every warning she had ever heard echoed in her head. Don't share your location. Don't trust strangers. Don't open your door at night. Especially not in Queens. Especially not when the building's hallway light had been broken for 3 weeks. Noah cried again, weaker this time. That sound made the decision for her. She typed her address. Apartment 3B. Then she added, almost defensively, "You don't have to come. I just need the money." The reply came instantly. "I'm already nearby." Her stomach dropped. Nearby? She moved toward the window and carefully pulled the curtain aside with 2 fingers. A black Mercedes S-Class turned slowly onto her block, its headlights cutting through the darkness like something unreal, something that did not belong between cracked sidewalks and dented mailboxes. The car stopped directly under the only working streetlight. The engine didn't shut off. Savannah's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. She stepped back from the window, then forward again. This was insane. She was insane. Her phone buzzed. "I'm outside." Noah let out a soft whimper. Savannah wrapped him in a thin blanket and held him close, feeling how light he had become in her arms. Hunger did that. It made babies quieter. She walked to the door but didn't unlock it. Instead, she called out through the wood, "I'm not opening it unless I see what you brought." There was a pause, then footsteps in the hallway. A calm male voice answered from the other side. "Nutramigen, 2 cans, and a portable power bank for your fridge." Silence. "How do you know it's Nutramigen?" she whispered. "You told me," he replied evenly. "And I looked up the closest 24-hour pharmacy." Savannah's breath caught. Slowly, she unlocked the door, but kept the chain latched. The hallway light flickered, revealing a tall man in a tailored dark coat. He wasn't flashy. No gold chains. No arrogance. Just steady eyes. He held up the formula. "I'm Harrison," he said quietly, "and I don't send money to strangers. I make sure babies eat." Savannah had never felt smaller or safer. Savannah kept the chain latched. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and someone's burned dinner downstairs. The flickering bulb above them buzzed, threatening to go out again. Harrison didn't move closer. He simply stood there, holding the 2 cans of Nutramigen in one hand and a compact portable power station in the other. Noah stirred against Savannah's shoulder. She adjusted the blanket and studied the man in front of her more carefully. Up close, he didn't look reckless or impulsive. His coat was tailored but understated. His shoes were polished but not flashy. There was no camera crew, no assistant, no smug expression. "Why would you drive out here?" she asked, her voice still tight. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said calmly. "You didn't ask for rent money. You didn't ask for $1,000. You asked for 50. The words landed harder than she expected. Savannah swallowed. "I said I'd pay it back." "I'm sure you would." He shifted slightly and placed the formula on the hallway floor so she could see it clearly. Then he crouched just enough to slide the small power unit closer. "Your fridge will keep running for a few hours with this," he added. "I noticed the building was dark." Her pride flared instinctively. "We'll be fine." Harrison looked at her, not judging, not pitying, just steady. Being fine doesn't mean doing it alone. Noah let out a tiny cry, his voice thin from hunger. The sound sliced through whatever wall Savannah was still trying to hold up. Without another word, she unlatched the chain. Harrison didn't step inside immediately. He waited. "May I?" he asked. That question, so simple and so respectful, shook her more than the luxury car downstairs. She nodded once. He entered slowly, setting the formula on the counter like it was something fragile, something sacred. The apartment was small, the air cold, the silence heavy. Harrison glanced around, taking everything in. The unpaid bills, the dark outlets, the exhaustion written across her face. Then his eyes settled on Noah. "He's smaller than he should be," he said quietly. Savannah's throat tightened. "I know." And for the first time that night, she didn't feel invisible anymore. The first scoop of formula hit the bottle like a small miracle. Savannah's hands were steady now, but her chest still felt tight. She moved automatically. Water, powder, shake, trying not to think about the stranger standing 3 feet away in her kitchen. Noah latched onto the bottle almost desperately. The sound of him swallowing filled the room. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Harrison didn't speak. He stood near the counter, hands loosely clasped in front of him, as if he understood this moment didn't belong to him. The portable power unit hummed softly on the floor, feeding life back into the refrigerator. Savannah watched her son drink, and only when his tiny fingers relaxed did she look up. "You can go," she said quietly. Not rude, just guarded. Harrison nodded once. "I will." But he didn't move yet. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim leather card holder. He slid out a simple white card and placed it on the counter beside the formula. No gold lettering, no dramatic gesture. Just a name. Harrison Blake. Under it, Blake Capital. Manhattan. Savannah frowned slightly. "I don't need charity." His expression didn't change. "It's not charity." "Then what is it?" "It's a line," he said evenly, "in case you ever need to ask for help again without feeling ashamed." The words hit somewhere deeper than she expected. "I don't make a habit of asking strangers for money," she said. "I don't make a habit of answering wrong numbers," he replied calmly. For a split second, something almost like humor passed between them. Then Savannah's gaze hardened again. "I meant what I said. I'll pay you back Friday." Harrison picked up his coat from the chair. "If it helps your pride," he said, "consider it a loan." He walked toward the door, but paused before stepping into the hallway. "For what it's worth," he added without turning around. "So you didn't make a mistake tonight." The door closed softly behind him. Savannah stood there in the quiet apartment, the hum of the borrowed electricity filling the air, her son finally asleep in her arms. On the counter, under the dim kitchen light, Harrison's card felt heavier than paper. It felt like something beginning. The knock came 2 days later, not gentle, not cautious. 3 hard pounds against the door that made Savannah's stomach drop before she even checked the peephole. Cole Bennett stood in the hallway like he owned the building. His hair was styled perfectly, his jaw clean-shaven, his expensive cologne almost visible through the thin crack when she opened the door halfway. He wore a fitted wool coat and the same confident smirk she used to mistake for charm. "You look tired," he said casually, some eyes sliding past her into the apartment. "Can I come in?" Savannah didn't move. "What are you doing here, Cole?" He sighed dramatically, as if she were the difficult one. "I saw something online. A black Mercedes parked outside this place at midnight? You don't exactly live on Billionaire Row." Her chest tightened. So that's how he knew. A neighbor must have posted it. Someone always did. "It's none of your business," she replied evenly. Cole's smile thinned. "It is if my son's in there." The word hit her like a slap. Your son. He hadn't said that once in 4 months. "You signed away your rights," she reminded him quietly. "Temporary paperwork," he corrected smoothly. "Circumstances change." Noah stirred inside, a soft sound that made Cole's head tilt. "That him?" he asked. Savannah instinctively stepped back, unblocking the doorway more firmly. "You don't get to show up because you smelled money." Cole's eyes darkened slightly, but he kept his voice light. "Money? I'm concerned, Savannah. A random rich guy shows up at midnight, and suddenly, you've got electricity back on?" Her pulse spiked. He was fishing. "You always did underestimate me," she said. Cole leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Or maybe you finally figured out how to upgrade." There it was. Not concern, jealousy, calculation. Savannah held his gaze without blinking. "If you're here to play father, you're late. If you're here to threaten me, don't." Cole's smirk returned slowly. "I'm here," he said calmly, "because if there's money involved, I deserve to know." Behind her, Noah began to cry, and for the first time, Savannah realized this wasn't about the past. It was about a fight that was just beginning. Cole didn't leave. Instead, he softened. It was subtle, a shift in posture, a careful exhale, the kind of change Savannah once confused for growth. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair. "We got off on the wrong foot." Savannah almost laughed. 4 months of silence, 1 signed document, 0 diapers changed, and now they were discussing feet. "I'm not here to fight," Cole continued, lowering his voice as Noah's crying grew louder inside. I panicked back then. I wasn't ready. That doesn't mean I don't care." Savannah crossed her arms. "You blocked my number. I was overwhelmed." "You moved in with Vanessa 2 weeks later." His jaw tightened at the name. "That's not your concern. It became my concern when you stopped being his father." Noah's cries sharpened again. Instinct overrode pride. Savannah stepped back to pick him up. Cole followed her inside without being invited. She turned quickly. "I didn't say you could come in." But he was already looking around the apartment, the second-hand couch, the stack of medical bills, the small portable power station humming beside the fridge. "Still rough," he muttered. Savannah held Noah against her chest. "Say what you came to say." Cole watched the baby for a long moment. His expression softened again, almost convincing. "He looks like me," he said quietly. Noah squirmed, turning his face into Savannah's shoulder. Cole stepped closer. "I want to try." She blinked. "Try what?" to be here, to help. If there's support now, if someone's backing you, maybe we can make this work. For him, the words were almost perfect. Almost. Savannah studied him carefully. Not once had he asked what the baby needed. Not once had he apologized. He was calculating. "You don't want to be a father," she said evenly. "You want leverage." Cole's expression flickered for half a second, before smoothing out again. "That's unfair." "No," she replied softly. "It's accurate." His eyes dropped briefly to the business card still resting on the kitchen counter. And in that glance, Savannah saw it. He didn't care about redemption. He cared about who Harrison Blake was. Cole left that night with a tight smile and a promise. "I'll be back tomorrow," he had said casually, as if fatherhood were a gym membership he could reactivate. Savannah didn't respond. But the next afternoon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. "Savannah Brooks?" a female voice asked, crisp and professional. "Yes." "My name is Diane Porter. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Cole Bennett. He's filing a petition to revisit custody arrangements regarding your son." The room went still. "What?" she whispered. "He believes the child's living environment may not be stable." Savannah's hand tightened around the phone. Noah was asleep in the small bassinet beside the couch, his chest rising and falling peacefully. "Unstable?" she repeated. "He's requesting shared custody, possibly primary placement, depending on evaluation." Savannah felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. "He signed termination papers," she said, her voice shaking now. "Temporary relinquishment," Diane corrected smoothly. "Not permanent." The call ended 5 minutes later, leaving Savannah staring at the wall. Her hands trembled, not because she doubted herself, but because she knew Cole. He wouldn't have done this unless he believed he had something to gain. Her gaze slowly shifted to the business card, still sitting on the kitchen counter. Harrison Blake. Cole had seen it. He'd read the name. Savannah grabbed her phone and searched it. Blake Capital. Manhattan fintech firm. $1 billion valuation. Wall Street recognition. Her stomach turned. Cole wasn't fighting for his son. He was fighting for proximity. And then her phone buzzed again. A text from Cole. "You should have told me who your new friend was. That changes things." A second message followed. "If there's money around my kid, I have rights." Savannah stared at the screen, something inside her hardening. Noah stirred, letting out a soft cry. She picked him up, holding him close. "I won't let him use you," she whispered. Across the river in Manhattan, Harrison Blake had no idea a legal war had just begun in his name. And Savannah realized something terrifying. The $50 she had needed for formula might cost her far more than money. The video went live at 8:42 p.m. Savannah didn't see it first. Her manager did. She was halfway through her shift at CVS, scanning a carton of eggs, when her phone began vibrating non-stop in the pocket of her scrub jacket. She ignored it until her supervisor, Maria, approached with a tight expression. "Savannah," Maria said quietly, "you need to look at this." She turned the screen around. Vanessa Cole, lifestyle influencer, 480,000 followers, smiled perfectly into the camera. "Ladies, let's talk about women who trap men with babies and then upgrade when a richer one shows up." Savannah's stomach dropped. The video cut to a blurry image of a black Mercedes parked under a streetlight in Queens. "That's not empowerment," Vanessa continued sweetly. "That's strategy." The comments were already flooding in. "Gold digger. Single moms always do this. Poor baby deserves better." Savannah felt heat rise to her face. "She didn't say your name," Maria whispered, "but people are connecting dots." Savannah stepped into the break room, hands shaking as she scrolled. Cole had liked the video. Of course he had. A new notification appeared. Unknown number. You see how fast narratives spread? Cole's text read. Court will too. Her throat tightened. This wasn't about custody. It was about image. Vanessa was building sympathy for Cole before the hearing. Savannah sat down hard in the plastic chair. She had never asked for publicity, never wanted attention. All she had done was ask for $50. Her phone buzzed again, this time a different name. Harrison Blake. Are you okay? Just 3 words. She stared at them for a long moment before replying. They're saying I used you. The typing bubble appeared instantly. I don't care what they're saying. Another message followed. But I care if you're scared. Savannah blinked back sudden tears. In the reflection of the break room mirror, she saw a tired woman in a name tag and discounted sneakers. Not a manipulator, not a strategist, just a mother. And suddenly, the fight wasn't just legal, it was public. Cole showed up the following Saturday with flowers, white lilies. Savannah almost laughed at the irony. He stood outside her apartment door looking rehearsed, dressed in a soft gray sweater instead of his usual sharp coat. If someone had filmed him from the hallway, he would have looked like a devoted father trying to reconnect. I just want to talk, he said gently. Savannah didn't trust the softness, but she also knew something else. Custody hearings favored effort. Appearances mattered. So she stepped aside. 5 minutes, she said. Cole entered slowly, glancing around as if assessing inventory rather than visiting his son. His eyes briefly landed on the portable power station and then moved on. Noah was awake on the blanket in the living room, kicking lightly, making small, curious sounds. Cole crouched down. Hey, buddy, he said, in a tone Savannah had never heard from him before. Daddy's here. The word hung in the air. Savannah stiffened. Cole extended a finger toward Noah's tiny hand. For a moment, the baby stared at him. Then Noah's face changed. His lower lip trembled. And then he cried. Not the hungry cry Savannah knew, not discomfort. This was sharp, alarmed. He twisted his body away from Cole's touch and reached blindly toward Savannah. Cole's smile faltered. It's fine, he muttered. He just doesn't recognize me. Savannah picked Noah up instinctively. The baby buried his face into her neck, gripping her shirt tightly with small, desperate fingers. Cole stood up slowly. You've been keeping him from me, he accused, though his voice lacked confidence. He's 4 months old, Savannah replied evenly. Babies know voices, patterns, presence. Cole's jaw tightened. I'm trying now. Noah whimpered again at the sound of his voice, and suddenly the performance cracked. Because babies don't understand court strategy. They don't care about money. They react to consistency, to safety. Cole looked at the child in Savannah's arms, and something flickered across his face. Frustration, not heartbreak. Savannah saw it clearly. Not once had he reached for the diaper bag. Not once had he asked about the pediatrician. He wanted the title, not the responsibility. And in that quiet living room, with no cameras and no audience, the truth revealed itself in the simplest way possible. Her son didn't know him. Savannah had never crossed the Queensboro Bridge during rush hour without feeling small. But this time felt different. Harrison's assistant had sent a car, not the dramatic midnight Mercedes, just a quiet black sedan that blended into Manhattan traffic. Savannah almost refused. Pride still lived in her chest like a stubborn flame. But this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about court. She held Noah close in the back seat as the skyline rose in front of her, glass towers reflecting late afternoon light. Manhattan looked polished, controlled, powerful. Nothing like her life. Blake Capital occupied the upper floors of a sleek Park Avenue tower. The lobby alone felt like another world. Marble floors, muted lighting, quiet confidence. No chaos. No peeling paint. Savannah adjusted the strap on her diaper bag before stepping inside. People glanced at her briefly, at the stroller, at the baby. But no one sneered. No one whispered. Upstairs, Harrison waited in a conference room lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River. He stood when she entered. "You didn't have to come," she said immediately. "I know," he replied. There was no tension, no expectation, just clarity. "You should know," she continued, steadying her voice. "Cole is filing for custody, and he's using you." Harrison didn't flinch. "I assumed he would," he said calmly. She blinked. "You assumed?" "When someone sees leverage," he said evenly, "they pull it." Savannah looked down at Noah sleeping peacefully in his carrier. "I don't want your money," she said. "I don't want him to say I used you to win." Harrison walked toward the window, hands in his coat pockets. "You won't win because of me," he said. "You'll win because he walked away first." She studied him carefully. "You're not scared this hurts your image?" A faint smile crossed his face. "My image isn't fragile." Silence settled between them. Then Harrison turned back to her. "I'm not stepping into court unless you ask," he said. "But I won't step away if you need support." Savannah felt something shift. For the first time since the electric bill shut off, she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. Outside, Manhattan moved forward like it always did. Inside that glass tower, so did she. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Certified mail. Savannah knew what it was before she even signed for it. Her hands felt colder than the November air as she closed the apartment door and stared down at the thick stack of legal paper. Noah was strapped against her chest in a soft carrier, his breathing warm and steady. She sat at the kitchen table and opened it. Cole Bennett versus Savannah Brooks. Petition for joint custody. Motion for primary placement, pending financial review. Her eyes scanned the words again and again until they blurred. Financial review. He wasn't just asking for visitation. He was questioning her stability. A lump formed in her throat as she flipped to the supporting statement. She has demonstrated inconsistent living conditions and unknown financial backing from third parties. Unknown financial backing. He didn't even write Harrison's name. He didn't need to. Savannah pressed her palm flat against the table to steady herself. The document listed her late utility payments, her reduced work hours after maternity leave, even the hospital debt from Noah's birth. He had done his homework. Her phone buzzed. A text from Cole. "You should have told me you were struggling. Judges don't like instability." Her chest tightened. Instability. As if he hadn't been the one who walked away. Another message followed. "If you cooperate, we can make this easy." Savannah felt something shift inside her. Not panic this time, but anger. She looked down at Noah. He stirred slightly, one small hand gripping the fabric of her sweater. Easy would have been abandoning him. Easy would have been giving up. She stood slowly and walked to the counter. Harrison's card still rested there. For a long moment, she stared at it. Then she picked up her phone. Not to ask for money. Not to ask him to fight for her. But to tell him the truth. "They filed," she typed. Across the river, in a glass office overlooking Wall Street, Harrison's phone lit up. And this time, he didn't wait 5 minutes to answer. Harrison didn't call. He showed up. Not at midnight this time. Not in secrecy. He arrived in the early afternoon, dressed in a charcoal overcoat, carrying nothing but his phone, and a quiet intensity Savannah hadn't seen before. "You sent me the filing," he said, as soon as she opened the door. I read it." Savannah stepped aside to let him in. "I don't want you dragged into this," she said quickly. "He's trying to make it look like I'm unstable because of you." Harrison's expression didn't change. He's not targeting you because of me, she frowned. Then why? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the small kitchen table where the court documents were spread out. He scanned them again, slower this time. Financial review, he murmured. Yes. He's not asking for shared parenting time in good faith, Harrison continued calmly. He's positioning for negotiation. Savannah felt her stomach tighten. Negotiation for what? Harrison finally looked up at her. For money. The word landed heavy. He thinks, Harrison went on evenly, that if I'm involved in your life, I'll pay to make this disappear. Savannah shook her head. You don't even know him. I don't need to, he replied. I know patterns. He pulled out his phone and tapped a few times before turning the screen toward her. A news article. 2 years ago. Cole Bennett's name appeared in a smaller tech blog. An early-stage startup, minor investor dispute, allegations of inflated user metrics. Nothing criminal, but enough to show character. He's done this before, Harrison said quietly. Create pressure. Offer a quiet resolution. Savannah's throat went dry. He wants me to panic, she whispered. Yes. And if you pay him? I won't. There was no hesitation. Savannah studied his face carefully. You could walk away. This isn't your fight. Harrison stepped closer, but not too close. I don't walk away from children who are used as leverage. The room fell silent. For the first time, Savannah understood something clearly. The $50 hadn't been the real cost. Cole believed she had found protection. Now he wanted to monetize it. And this time, she wasn't just defending her motherhood. She was exposing his strategy. The email arrived at 6:12 p.m. Subject line, Private Resolution Proposal. Savannah was sitting on the floor, gently rocking Noah in her arms, when her phone buzzed. Harrison stood by the kitchen counter reviewing documents Eleanor Price, his recommended attorney, had sent earlier that afternoon. Savannah opened the email. It was from Cole's lawyer. Short, polite, strategic. In the interest of avoiding prolonged litigation and public exposure, Mr. Bennett is willing to withdraw his petition in exchange for a mutually agreed financial settlement. Her hands went still. There it was. Not fatherhood. Not concern. A price tag. What does it say? Harrison asked quietly. She turned the phone toward him. He read it once, then again. Slower. No number listed, Savannah whispered. They're waiting for us to suggest one, Harrison replied evenly. Savannah's chest tightened. He's using his own child as leverage. Harrison's jaw shifted, just slightly. He believes pressure creates profit. Noah stirred in her arms, making a small, sleepy sound. Savannah pressed her lips to her son's hair, fighting back tears, not from fear, but from fury. Another email notification appeared. Attachment. Draft agreement. Harrison opened it on his phone. Clause 4. Confidential financial contribution from third party not to exceed 7 figures. Savannah blinked. 7 figures? Harrison gave a humorless breath. He thinks I'll pay to protect reputation. Silence filled the apartment. Savannah looked around at her small living room, the worn couch, the stack of unpaid hospital bills, the portable power unit humming softly beside the fridge. 7 figures could erase everything. Debt, rent, fear. But it would also confirm the narrative. Gold digger, trap, strategy. I won't let him buy silence, she said firmly. Harrison studied her face carefully. You understand this will get uglier. It already is. Her voice didn't shake. Harrison typed a response. Mr. Blake declines. We'll see you in court. He showed her the screen before hitting send. Savannah nodded once. The message went out. Across town, Cole Bennett's phone lit up. And for the first time since filing the petition, he realized something unexpected. They weren't negotiating. Cole didn't wait for court. He went louder. The next morning, Vanessa posted again, this time with tears. I stayed quiet, she began softly, seated in what looked like a perfectly styled Manhattan apartment. But when a woman tries to manipulate a good father and a respected businessman for money, we have to speak up. Savannah's heart pounded as she watched. Vanessa didn't say Harrison's name. She didn't need to. A blurred screenshot of a financial news headline about Blake Capital appeared behind her. Then, a cutaway image of Savannah's apartment building, the same streetlight, the same cracked sidewalk. This isn't empowerment, Vanessa continued. No, it's exploitation. The comments exploded within minutes. Protect the father. Courts need to stop rewarding this behavior. Poor baby caught in greed. Savannah felt heat rise up her neck. This wasn't just gossip anymore. It was branding. Cole was building a story where he was the stable one, the investor-friendly one, the victim of a manipulative ex who conveniently found a billionaire. Her phone buzzed. Eleanor Price. I assume you've seen it, the attorney said calmly. Yes. Good, Eleanor replied, because this is reckless. Savannah blinked. Reckless? Public commentary during pending litigation shows motive, Eleanor said evenly. They're not thinking like parents. They're thinking like marketers. Savannah sank into the couch, Noah asleep beside her. Will it hurt me? She asked quietly. Not if we document everything, Eleanor replied. Stay silent. Let them talk. Minutes later, Harrison texted. I've instructed my PR team not to respond. Savannah stared at the message. You have a PR team? I run a public company, he answered simply. Silence stretched. Then another text. Do you trust me? She hesitated. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about control of a narrative she never asked for. Yes, she typed. Outside, somewhere in Manhattan, Cole and Vanessa were refreshing their engagement metrics. But they had made one mistake. They thought public opinion was the verdict. Court was coming. And stories don't always end the way influencers script them. The hearing was still 2 weeks away when Eleanor called again. This just became interesting, she said. Savannah shifted Noah on her hip and closed the apartment door behind her. That doesn't sound comforting. It is, Eleanor replied, but only if you're ready. An hour later, Savannah sat inside Eleanor's office in Midtown. Clean lines, quiet authority. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with law books. It felt nothing like the chaos Vanessa had been broadcasting online. Harrison was already there. On the conference table lay printed screenshots, emails, bank transfers, corporate filings. Savannah's eyes widened. What is this? Eleanor folded her hands calmly. Mr. Bennett's startup is preparing for a funding round, possibly an acquisition. Savannah frowned. So, Eleanor continued, sliding a document forward. In his investor pitch deck, he lists himself as a family-oriented founder, committed to stability and legacy. Savannah felt the air leave her lungs. He hasn't seen Noah in 4 months, she whispered. Harrison spoke evenly. He needed visible fatherhood. Eleanor nodded. When you refused the settlement, they pivoted to narrative control. But here's the problem. She tapped another document, a timestamp. Cole signed temporary relinquishment papers 4 months ago, and a recorded email exchange between Cole and his attorney discussing optics. Savannah stared at the word. Optics. Is that legal? She asked. Stupid, Eleanor corrected. Very stupid. Harrison leaned back slightly. He assumed you'd fold, or that I'd pay. Savannah looked at the stack of evidence again. For the first time, the panic that had lived in her chest for weeks eased slightly. They built a story, she said slowly. Yes, Eleanor replied, but they forgot something. What? Stories collapse when receipts exist. Savannah glanced at Harrison. "You didn't dig this up for revenge," she said quietly. "No," he replied. "I did it because he underestimated you." Silence settled across the table. Outside, Manhattan moved with its usual certainty. Inside that office, Savannah realized something powerful. Cole had tried to monetize her fear, but he had left a paper trail, and paper trails don't cry on camera. Family court didn't look dramatic. No marble columns, no cameras, just fluorescent lights, wooden benches, and the quiet tension of lives waiting to be decided. Savannah sat beside Eleanor, Noah asleep in his carrier at her feet. She wore her simplest navy dress and the only pair of heels she owned. No performance, no tears for sympathy. Across the room, Cole stood in a tailored suit, Vanessa seated behind him like moral support for the cameras that weren't allowed inside. He looked confident until the hearing began. The judge reviewed the initial petition calmly, flipping through the documents with practiced neutrality. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "you're requesting primary placement due to instability." "Yes, Your Honor," Cole replied smoothly. "I'm concerned about my son's living conditions and financial uncertainty." Savannah's hands tightened briefly in her lap. Eleanor stood. "Your Honor, we would like to introduce documentation showing the petitioner voluntarily relinquished custody 4 months ago." She handed the papers forward. The judge examined them. Cole's jaw shifted. "And," Eleanor continued evenly, "we would also like to submit email correspondence discussing the strategic timing of this petition in relation to Mr. Bennett's pending investor round." The courtroom went still. Cole's attorney stiffened. "Objection." "Overruled," the judge said calmly. "I'll review it." Minutes stretched long and heavy. Savannah focused on Noah's soft breathing, not the whispers, not Vanessa's tight expression. The judge finally looked up. "Mr. Bennett," she said evenly, "the court is not a marketing tool." Cole's face lost color. "There is no evidence the child is unsafe," the judge continued. "However, there is clear evidence of abandonment, followed by opportunistic filing." Savannah felt her chest fill with air she hadn't realized she was holding. The ruling was simple. Full custody to Savannah, unsupervised visitation pending parental responsibility. Evaluation, child support ordered. Cole's request for primary placement denied. The gavel didn't slam dramatically. It didn't need to. Outside the courthouse, Vanessa avoided eye contact with reporters who had shown up anyway. Cole stood frozen on the steps. Savannah didn't look at him. She picked up her son and walked forward. The headlines didn't explode. They shifted. 2 days after the hearing, a small financial blog published a quiet piece. Startup founder faces custody questions amid funding round. No dramatic accusations, just facts. Temporary relinquishment, opportunistic filing, public narrative manipulation. Investors read between lines better than followers do. Savannah didn't see the article first. Harrison did. He forwarded it with a short message. "No, this is how markets respond." Across town, Cole's office wasn't quiet. An emergency board meeting had been scheduled at 9 a.m. inside a glass conference room overlooking Midtown. The same pitch deck he had polished for weeks now felt fragile. "Why weren't we aware of this custody issue?" one investor asked evenly. "It was personal," Cole replied tightly. "It's public now," another responded. "Funding rounds don't collapse overnight. They cool. Phone calls get delayed. Meetings get rescheduled. Terms get renegotiated." By Friday afternoon, the lead investor paused negotiations pending reputational clarification. Vanessa posted nothing. Her engagement had dipped the moment court transcripts surfaced online. Sympathy doesn't trend when documentation exists. Savannah was folding laundry when her phone buzzed. A notification from the court portal. Child support payment processed. It wasn't 7 figures. It wasn't dramatic. But it was official. enforceable, real. She stared at the confirmation longer than she expected, not because she wanted his money, but because it meant accountability. Across the river, Cole stood alone in his apartment. Vanessa had returned to her own place, for space. His phone sat silent on the marble counter. No investor updates, no viral support, just consequence. Savannah didn't celebrate. She didn't post. She didn't respond to any comments online. She held Noah in her arms and whispered, "You're staying with me." That was enough. That night, Harrison stopped by, not with formula this time, not with urgency. Just dinner from a quiet Italian place in Manhattan, and a simple question. "Are you okay?" Savannah looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was defending something. She was building. And consequences, she realized, don't scream. They settle. Winning custody didn't fix everything. It fixed the fear. But fear and stability are not the same thing. 2 weeks after the hearing, Savannah sat at her small kitchen table with Noah asleep in his bassinet beside her. The unpaid hospital bills were still there. The rent was still due. The apartment was still modest. But something had shifted inside her. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was planning. Harrison hadn't offered money. He hadn't needed to. Instead, he had sent her a link, a continuing education program at a community college in Manhattan, digital marketing certification, evening classes, flexible schedule. "Why, you're good with people," he had said simply. "You handled public pressure better than most executives I know." Savannah had laughed at that, but she enrolled. 3 nights a week, after work, she studied while Noah slept. She bought a refurbished MacBook Air with her first child support payment, not as a gift, not as luxury, but as a tool. The first time she opened it on her kitchen table, she felt something unfamiliar. Momentum. She learned analytics, branding ethics, media strategy. Ironically, the same tools Vanessa had used against her. But Savannah learned them differently, with integrity. One evening, while reviewing a case study, she paused. She understood now how narratives are built, how fear is packaged, how influence can distort truth. And she smiled slightly, because she had survived it without losing herself. Harrison didn't hover. He checked in, sometimes with coffee from a small Manhattan cafe, sometimes just with a text. "How's the assignment?" He never made her feel rescued. He made her feel capable. Months passed. Noah gained weight, laughed more, slept better. Savannah finished her certification at the top of her class, and when Blake Capital needed a community outreach strategist for a new financial literacy initiative, Eleanor was the one who suggested her name. Savannah didn't walk into the glass tower this time feeling small. She walked in prepared, because this wasn't about being saved. It was about becoming someone no one could underestimate again. Spring came quietly to Central Park. Savannah noticed it the morning Noah tried to grab sunlight like it was something he could hold. The air was warmer, softer. The trees were finally green instead of stubborn and bare. She stood near the path with the stroller, while Harrison returned from a nearby coffee cart, 2 cups in his hands. "Still prefer oat milk?" he asked, handing one to her. She smiled. "Still remembering small things?" "Always." They walked slowly along the path, not talking much. They didn't need to. The city moved around them. Joggers, dog walkers, tourists taking skyline photos. But their pace felt unhurried. Savannah had been working at Blake Capital for 3 months now, not as a favor, not as charity. She had earned her place. Her financial literacy program for single parents had already launched in 2 boroughs. She felt steady, and Harrison felt different too, less distant, more present. They stopped near the lake. Noah giggled at the reflection of light dancing across the water. Harrison watched them both for a long moment before speaking. I never asked you something, he said quietly. Savannah looked up. What? Do you want more? She frowned slightly. More what? He hesitated. Not unsure, but careful. Not security. Not stability. You built that. I mean, more with me. There was no grand gesture, no audience, no dramatic kneeling. Just a man who had shown up once at midnight and kept showing up after. Savannah studied his face carefully. You didn't save me, she said softly. I know. You stood beside me. I know that too. She exhaled slowly. I don't need a rescuer, she continued, but I want a partner. Harrison reached into his coat pocket, not dramatically, just naturally, and held out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple Tiffany ring, elegant, understated. No rush, he said. No pressure. Savannah felt tears rise, but not from fear this time. From peace. Yes, she whispered. Noah laughed loudly at nothing in particular, and for the first time, the future didn't feel fragile. It felt chosen. 1 year later, the lights stayed on. Savannah noticed that first. Not the soft music playing near the counter. Not the scent of fresh espresso drifting through the air. Not even the polished wood shelves lined with books about financial literacy and personal growth. Just the lights. Bright. Steady. Paid for. Brooks & Company Cafe had opened on a quiet Brooklyn corner that spring. It wasn't flashy. No marble floors, no velvet ropes. Just warm brick walls, large windows, and a small chalkboard sign outside that read, Community. Coffee. Second chances. When Savannah stood behind the counter in a simple cream blouse and jeans, her engagement ring catching the light as she handed a latte to a regular customer. Noah, now walking, now laughing loudly at everything, was in the back office with a sitter, surrounded by picture books and wooden blocks. Harrison sat at a corner table, not in a suit, not commanding attention. Just another customer with a laptop open, occasionally glancing up with quiet pride. The cafe wasn't funded by a payout. It wasn't built from hush money. Savannah had used her salary, her savings, and a small business loan approved under her name alone. Harrison had offered to invest. She had said no. He had respected that. Across town, Cole Bennett read an email in his nearly empty apartment. Funding round canceled. Board restructuring pending. Founder role under review. Nay, Vanessa had long since pivoted her content. The sympathy campaign hadn't aged well once court records became public. Cole stared at a framed photo of himself at a product launch 2 years earlier. Confident. Untouchable. Now he checked his bank app more than his social media. Consequences don't trend. They linger. Back in Brooklyn, the cafe door opened again. Harrison stood and walked to the counter. Table for 3? He asked lightly. Savannah smiled. For 3, she confirmed. Noah ran toward them, arms open. Savannah lifted her son easily. The woman who once begged for $50 in the dark now stood in her own light. Not rescued, not rewritten, rewarded. And just like that, the story comes to a close. But my friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with this story until now, then something must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it wasn't about money. Maybe it wasn't even about love. Maybe it was about dignity, the kind you fight for when no one is watching. Savannah's journey reminds us of something powerful. Hardship doesn't define you. Your response does. She didn't win because a billionaire showed up. She won because she chose integrity when manipulation would have been easier. She chose courage when fear was louder, and she chose responsibility over revenge. There's a philosophy called ethical egoism, the idea that we must take care of ourselves wisely, not selfishly, but intentionally. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, you have power over your mind. not outside events. Healing begins when we stop begging the world to be fair and start building strength within ourselves. Savannah didn't become strong overnight. She became strong the moment she refused to sell her silence. So now I ask you, what in your life needs rebuilding, not rescuing? If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own quiet battles, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Someone else out there might need this reminder tonight. And if you're still here, thank you. You're stronger than you think. This story is a fictional narrative created for educational and inspirational purposes. While it reflects realistic situations such as custody disputes, financial hardship, and personal growth, the characters, events, and companies portrayed are not representations of real individuals or actual legal cases. Any resemblance to real persons or organizations is purely coincidental. The business elements, legal processes, and financial references are included to provide context and emotional depth, not to present financial, legal, or professional advice. Viewers should not interpret this story as guidance for real-life legal decisions or investment strategies. The intent of this content is to explore themes of resilience, accountability, and personal integrity through storytelling. All situations are dramatized to create an engaging narrative experience for audiences.